I wonder how many university policies I've. Can I leave my computer? I'll open it up for you. Oh, God. I mean, like. Okay, we'll use one then. Okay, got it. No, I don't.
Oh, yeah, just again, right there. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Happy Monday. Happy our meeting. So thank you so much for coming today. We're going to talk to you about your capstone. Very exciting. And before we get started, just want to say overview that this session is meant to decrease stress, not increase stress. So let's all stay focused there, that this is really just providing you information, giving you some things to think about over the summer, because you'll have time over the summer to kind of think about, brainstorm, maybe talk to some alums from the class above about what they did. It's not meant to stress you out and make you feel like you have a ton of things to do over the summer in addition to your internship. It's really just to alleviate some stress, because if we didn't study anything about Capstone, you'd be worried about what it is, how am I going to get myself there, the whole 9 yards. So we are going to give you more information than you need today, but again, it's really just to provide you information, answer questions, and get you to think about the project. So please keep that in mind. Because I know sometimes when you learn more, then you do start to get stressed. So we're trying to keep that from happening. So today we will provide you with an overview of the capstone, talk about what it is. We'll go through the logistics of the actual project and the course. There's both. There's the project with your client, and there's also the course. We'll give you some things to consider about what makes a good project. Start getting your thinking going about what makes a good project for a semester and what is not such a good project. And then give you things to consider over the summer and the fall, upcoming fall. There are resources that Cecilia will review, and also we'll be updating that over the summer and provide you more when you get back in the fall as well. And then we'll have a Q&A session. You can answer any questions. We are recording this session, and we'll send out the recording to everybody afterwards. In case you want to watch it again, but mostly for folks who weren't able to see it, we'll send them the recording. Before I get started. Okay, there we go. So what is the capstone? It is a core requirement, so you do have to complete your capstone before you graduate. It's part of your degree, and we consider it to be your final project. It is a individual project you will do on your own with a client, and it's a real world problem that you're tackling with a real world client who actually wants what you're working on for the work that they're doing. It needs to be completed during your final spring semester, so that can be one of the challenges is identifying a project that is large enough to be complex enough to hold your attention for a whole semester, but also simple enough to be able to be completed in one semester's time, which is not all that long when you get down to it. It needs to be a project that includes the tools that you've been working on as an MDP student. So you want to be able to use the tools in your toolkit, tackle a research problem, do some analysis that really allows you to explore the tools and skills that you've developed during the program. It needs to be complex enough where you're identifying and weighing options, that there's not just a clear-cut answer that the client wants to drive you toward. It needs to be something that you're grappling with over time and gathering data or using data that's provided to answer a question. You want to be able to identify a problem where you're able to identify recommendations that you then deliver to your client. It's actually seeking those recommendations. Okay, so some of the details about the project. it's obviously an individual project. You are negotiating the scope of your project with your clients and with your faculty advisor. So with the Capstone course, you will be working with an advisor, a faculty advisor, and we'll most likely have 2 sections of Capstone next year. So 2 different faculty members teaching 2 different sections, and you'll work with that faculty advisor the whole semester on your Capstone project. And in the beginning, in the fall, working through that scope of work with your faculty advisor and a client. The student is responsible for securing their own Capstone project, and we'll talk more about the resources that we provide to help you do that. And you are required to get approval for your actual project and scope by your Capstone instructor. And that's really just to make sure that that instructor has a chance to take a look at it, make sure that it's complex enough to be a Capstone, and again, not too large to actually be completed in a semester. The time commitment for your Capstone, everyone will be required to sign up for the Capstone course, which is 6 units, 18 to 20 hours per week. But then if you would like to give yourself more time to spend on your Capstone, you can also opt to add an additional 3-unit independent study, which then gives you more time in your schedule if you really just want to be focusing in more on the Capstone. And the reason we added that optional 3-unit independent study is that we found that there are many students who actually got so excited and really serious about their Capstone that they didn't have enough time for other courses in their spring semester, and they came to us and asked, would it be possible to actually add a 3-unit independent study so that I can focus more time on my Capstone if I wish, and we're totally fine with that. So it's not that the folks who only do the 6-unit are doing a smaller project, not at all. Everyone's doing a large project. It is your final project and allows you to show off your skills and your tools, your toolkit. But if you want to set aside more time, you can with the independent study. So again, it's either 6 or 9 units. Okay, went over that already. So project scope, just to dive into a little bit more details on your scope, you do want to choose a project where you are solving a problem. You are centering on a decision that the client has to make or a project that they're trying to tackle, a real world problem that they're working on. And the reason why we focus on that, focus on the fact that it's a real world problem that the client's trying to solve and that you are giving them recommendations on that problem, is that we want you to find a client that's very engaged in the work that you're doing. And it doesn't mean that it can't be something that you think of yourself and create on your own and find a client that's interested in that same thing. But you really want to make sure that that client is very invested and engaged in the work that you're doing, because you want them to be accessible to you. And if they have a stake in the project as well and are really interested in seeing that work completed because it's helping them with work that they're doing, or helping them answer a problem or a question that they're trying to answer, they're more likely to be engaged with you, meet with you, make sure to set aside time, get the data for you that you need, the whole 9 yards. So we're giving you this as a requirement, but also because over time, over many, many years, we've learned that that's the way to have a really good experience, is to have a client who's very invested in what you're doing. Again, your project should be challenging. And the way you can think about that is, are there trade-offs to confront? Is this just a really simple problem where the client's driving me to a certain answer? Or is it that there really are good solutions to weigh, confront, gather data on, and share the trade-offs that you would make in answering this question? If the client themselves is uncertain on how to solve the problem, that makes a really good problem to tackle. And then, is there data to analyze? Are you able to either easily access quantitative and qualitative data on this topic, or is it clear to you how you could gather data in the time allotted and then analyze that data? And that's really key, because oftentimes you can think of a really interesting question and problem that you'd like to solve or work on, but not all problems or questions if the data isn't already accessible to you, can be answered in a semester timeframe if you would have to spend a lot of time gathering data. A lot of students will choose a project where they're gathering qualitative data, they're doing interviews, they're doing surveys. But if you're choosing a project where that data is held by a governmental agency, for example, and you would have to go through 10 steps in order to access that data before you could even start analyzing it, those are some things to talk through with your faculty advisor about. Is it feasible in the time that we have allotted to actually tackle those problems when we know that we have this issue with gathering the data, getting access to the data? And I think I've said this many times, the project needs to be completed in one semester, so a narrow enough scope, but still complex. Okay. What should be included in your final capstone report? So to back up a little bit, your client may want that final capstone report as well, but for sure, you will turn in a final capstone report to your class, to your course, to your faculty advisor. Your client, on the other hand, might want that report, but they also might want a slide deck. They might want you to present to some constituencies that they have related to this project. They might have other deliverables that you're doing in addition to the report, but for sure that report's going to be turned into your class and will be what is graded by your faculty member. Okay, so the report should address the development challenge or problem, should confront those trade-offs that we mentioned, outline alternatives, give clear, concrete recommendations, and just a reminder that your client may actually implement the recommendations that you make. So you want to make sure that they're responsible and are things that you can stand behind with your analysis. And the report should be compelling, easy to read, interesting to your audience. Okay. What does not make an ideal capstone project? If there's no problem to solve, too simple. If you're only collecting data, but not doing anything with it, if you're not being asked to analyze that data in any way, that's not a capstone project. If there's no analysis, you're not confronting alternatives, not providing trade-offs to the client, that would not be considered a capstone project. And the reason we're calling these things out is, for example, sometimes students have been asked to create a strategic plan for an organization. And our faculty members will often dissuade you from taking on that kind of project if there's no data to analyze and it's not complex enough. Because it's very attractive to a client to ask you to work on their strategic planning document, but that may not make a good capstone if it doesn't require you to do some of the deeper thinking and deeper analysis. If the client already has a solution to the problem, that does not make a good project. I've mentioned that already. If the capstone is part of a larger project, the reason why that can be problematic is if your capstone is, if your client is carving out a smaller part of a larger project that they're working on, it may not be complex enough to be a full capstone, and it just depends. So that's maybe not one that's as clear cut, because your capstone could be part of a larger project, but it really needs to be standalone and something that you can take from start to finish in that semester. So that's something to discuss with your client and with your faculty advisor. Yes.
I just want to double check, so when you say like analysis, quantitative analysis is like a non-negotiable in terms of like the data analysis bit?
I don't think we should say that, because qualitative analysis is just as good. And I will also say that there could be a development problem that you're tackling that perhaps wouldn't include quantitative analysis, and that would be fine. Yeah, so this is not meant to be cookie cutter by any stretch of the imagination. You wouldn't believe like the full gamut of things that students have worked on. It's very, very diverse. So this is definitely not trying to put you in too much of a box. More, this is just trying to describe how thorny should the project be, what kind of things do you want to stay away from, like picking a project where you can't gather the data that you need or the qualitative data that you need, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Okay.
Cool.
Yes, of course.
I think also when you're trying to solve a problem and you're trying to give somebody a potential solution, it's a more compelling argument to have something to back up what you're saying is the course of action, whether it's numbers or whether it's qualitative data. So that just kind of makes your presentation a little stronger to have something to back up what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. That was a good question. Okay, so I have one more slide and then I'm going to pass the mic to Cecile. This is just to reiterate that you will take the 6-unit course in the spring and you have an option for the 3-unit independent study. And I can answer more questions about that at the end if there are any. So I will pass the mic to you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Okay, and just to reiterate what Annie said, all the stuff that we're sharing with you today is not meant to add more anxiety to your plate, but just to give you a heads up of what's ahead and things to think about. So just some logistics about the capstone. It's a weekly seminar led by an instructor. In each section, there will be about 10 to 12 students, about 10 to 12 students in each section. So it'll be a small seminar with those students and the instructor. And section starts the first week of classes in spring 2025. The way that you'll be assigned to a capstone section. And what we'll do is sometime in October, we will survey you on your instructor preferences, and then you'll be assigned based on the preferences. And then fast forward to the final report, you'll submit your final paper to your capstone instructor, one to Tina, and of course to your client. In terms of the instructor's role, there's a few things besides leading the section, the seminar section in the spring. During the fall, once you're assigned to a capstone instructor, they're also an additional person who would give you assistance and resources when it comes to discussing potential project ideas, getting feedback from your instructor on projects that you're considering to ensure that it meets the requirements, and of course, getting approval for your project once you have finalized one. For international students,
About the last line, are the instructors that you assign to us going to be only within GSGP?
Can I answer that at the end? Is that okay? Okay.
So, one of the things about the capstone is that it's essentially a professional work experience. And so if you're an international student and your client is an off-campus US-based organization, then you would need to apply for CPT or AT work authorization. And this is what BIO's take on this is, regardless if you're getting paid for your capstone project or not. This is not something that you have to worry about now. You can't, there's nothing to do until you actually have an offer for capstone. But just a few reminders on CPT is that BIO prefers applying for CPT 2 weeks before your start date. And the person who would sign your forms would be your career advisor. And then, of course, if you have a unique situation and have any questions, it's best to consult with BIO. Yeah.
For F1, you said obviously US-based. So if it's not US-based, then you don't need the authorization. Like if you're completing a project for someone abroad.
Yes. The CPT and AT is only for US-based organizations.
Just be really careful, Max, because a lot of international organizations will have registration in the United States, even if they have offices abroad.
Yes. When you start your project. So if everybody starts their project on the week of June 21st, 2025, then when you submit your AT forms, you would have the minimum of time you would need to submit those forms is 2 weeks prior to start date.
You mean January.
January 21st, 2020.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
So similar to what some of you might be doing for your summer internship, if you're working in the US for a US-based organization, you have to submit work authorization forms. It's the same timeline, 2 weeks prior to the date you would be starting work on the project or your internship. Any other questions?
The duration would be 18 weeks, right? So we're doing this.
Pretty much, yeah.
So all the work is technically the best to finish that at the end of your fall semester. Start the project.
It really depends because, you would really not be starting work until January 2025. Some people might start, early on in January, but whatever you've agreed upon with your client, what the start date is gonna be, go back 2 weeks. Now, the tricky thing is that there's winter break and bio is closed during a certain time, so if you can get it in December, awesome. If you can get it in, the first or second week of January, that would be great. But they recommend 2 weeks. I think at minimum, they need 5 days and they can't backdate anything and they're pretty strict on that, so. Yeah,
Okay, just want to ask about I think we have some limitation regarding the time that we can use for our overall AP. Do you think if we, for example, apply for that kind of thing, then it will reduce and continue until the end, or it's gonna be stop when the work is stopped? Do you understand what I mean?
I do understand what you're saying. I'm not as familiar with J1. So I don't know.
It's a bio question.
It's a bio
Okay,
question. Yeah, yeah. Sorry to refer you to bio, but
No worries.
they want us to, and they want to hear from students, so that's definitely a question for them.
Get paid for your capstone and any predictable.
It's possible. If your client is able to pay, then that's a possibility. Some clients pay, some clients don't pay. Okay, so the next couple of slides are just basically, that we can recommend that, for you to think about over the summer. Of course, you're gonna be doing your summer internships, but it's a great time to start kind of brainstorming ideas, either things that you think about in your mind or things that you see on the news, or even things that you witnessed during your summer internship that seemed interesting to you, and something that you might want to pursue further. So there are a number of things that you can think about in terms of what you'd like your capstone to be like. In terms of learning, are you interested in learning a brand new topic, or a brand new skill? Or are you interested in just diving deeper into a topic or a skill that you're already familiar with? Those are some things for you to think about. There's no right or wrong here. It's really up to you. In terms of the type of organization, are you interested in working for a private sector entity or a nonprofit or a multilateral, different sectors that are out there that might be doing the kind of work that you're interested in? If you're interested in government, what level of government? Is it an international government? Is it the US? Where the organization is located, if that's something that's important to you. The size of the organization doesn't always come into play, but do you want to work for a really large bureaucratic organization for your capstone, or do you want your client to be a smaller, flatter organization? Client characteristics, these will definitely vary between each student, but at the core, you do want a client who will respond to your emails when you have questions, who will meet with you when needed, or even schedule a regular meeting schedule with you throughout the semester. You definitely want a client that's going to provide you with information that's going to help you carry out your project, whether that's data, whether it's access to data, whether it's people that would be helpful for you to talk to for your project. You definitely want to make sure that those are things that are readily available by the client. And ideally, like Annie said, just to reiterate, this isn't a theoretical project. This is a real world problem that you're trying to help a client to solve. So ideally, you would love for your client to be able to make some kind of decision on the recommendations that you're providing to them. And lastly, you know, there's of course professional and career benefits to doing these kinds of capstone projects. It could provide networking opportunities for a future job after graduation. I think, you know, always keeping that in the back of your mind when you're engaging in a academic project is always a good idea. It could give you increased visibility and or exposure in the particular field that you're working in, depending on your project topic. Sometimes clients ability to have their final report published in some way, whether it's like on a website or very rarely they'll go through the process of having your paper published in a peer-reviewed journal, but it has happened. So those are things to think about in terms of your future after completing the capstone. I mentioned this before, you know, while you're in your summer internship this summer, just be aware of the projects that you're being assigned to, interesting problems that you might become aware of, whether it's within your organization or in the field that you're working on. It's a great time to brainstorm a list of potential clients, aka organizations that you're interested in doing a capstone project with. During your internship, especially if you're interested in continuing to experience in that particular field, it's a great time to sit down with either your supervisor or other folks that you meet at your internship organization about other organizations that might be interested in the type of work you're interested in. And you never know if your internship organization might help. If you reach that point and you've got some ideas, summer is also a great time to kind of start planting the seeds about a potential project in the spring with a potential client that you might need. And that's also ideal, especially if you're traveling to outside of the Bay Area for your summer internship. Having those conversations face to face tend to be more productive than over email. But not that you couldn't do it. And then in the fall, again, FYI, we'll be doing another session in September once the capstone faculty of the MDP are in place. That usually happens over the summer. And it's also a time to meet with your career advisor. Because basically your resources in terms of advising and help would be your capstone faculty advisor and also your career advisor. In September through November is kind of the period where you would be having conversations with potential clients and or applying to proposals that the school will receive and that will be posted in June. I didn't mention that earlier, but over the summer, we will be doing outreach to clients. Some students will get their capstone project through conversations that they have with potential clients, and others will get their capstone through a proposal that they submitted. There's no right or wrong here. They both happen. In October, November is when you'll receive the capstone instructor preference survey, and that's what we'll use to assign faculty advisors. And then career services will also survey just so that we can gauge how you're doing with the capstone search, and so we can help you so that we know who ideally, we would love for you to have your capstone project finalized by the beginning of December, but that will vary depending on students and the projects that they're considering Instructor approval is required, and then don't forget to apply for your 8 without your situation. Yes.
On the part of the proposal.
Yes.
So I know obviously one part of it is students trying to scout. But now because we're moving into GST and then not a specific clientele that caters to masters of public policy versus MDP has a different thing. But now that we're moving into the department, I'm wondering if the sort of type of organization or client will match what MDPs are essentially trying to do. I'm assuming students could be interested in like impact evaluation, focus towards
Well, I mean, every summer we make every effort because we also have the Master of Public Affairs program, which is slightly different because they're mid-career students too. So we're constantly trying to changing of our student body, not to mention that even in the MPP, it's almost half of them who are interested in international projects. So a lot of our work during the summer is making sure we do the right outreach. We do outreach to all of our alumni, including MDP, MPA, MPP, PhD, and having the MDP alumni base will definitely help with that. So we are going to make I can't promise, but we're going to make every effort. Same thing with the different demographics and the other programs too. It's definitely something that we're going to try our best to get a good set of proposals that are in. And you know, not every proposal is, and I told this to the MPP students last week, not every single proposal is going to meet every single student's ideal interest, but we will do our best to make sure that we get a good group. Yes.
Actually, this won't be the first time.
Yeah, it won't
This
be the
year's
first time.
class already did this. 30% of MDP students found their capstones.
the GSDP
Process, and it included projects that included United Nations or an education project in Somalia. And certainly getting more international ones is on the agenda. But it's certainly been a fruitful process already for the MDP program.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
Yes.
She mentioned that with regards to like the academic training and this, if the country has a country office outside, you may still want me to apply for that. I noticed a lot of these companies, something like Oxfam, if they have a country. So if you are working for the Ghanaian branch, you still have to apply for it.
I'm not sure. I don't know, Krista, if you know
That's
that
just
answer.
too complex of a question to answer theoretically. So when you would get an offer, you would need to go talk to bio and get it figured out.
It's just like with the Capstone, the work authorization. Some of it is cookie cutter and a lot of it is not, especially when it comes to whether or not you need work authorization if it's a US-based organization but located. So bio is your best bet for that. I have one slide left. Or maybe 2 slides, sorry. So in terms of ways to secure a client, I kind of covered this already. Having conversations with potential clients and then applying to proposals that come in. And then various resources. Of course, when you get assigned to a faculty advisor, that's one resource, your GSPP career advisor, proposals that come in through GSPP jobs, your summer internship employer, and anyone else that you interact with during the summer. It doesn't just have to be your supervisor. It could be other members of the team that you're working with or people who work in different parts of the organization. GSPP alumni for any of our degree programs, GSPP faculty, UC Berkeley faculty that you've taken courses with, your own professional networks that you've established before coming to GSPP and also that you've established this year already. And then there is a repository of past Capstone projects. We have a few from last year's MDP class. We also have a lot from the MDP and MPA past Capstone projects. And even though they're all different degree programs, the topics and the potential clients that give you ideas for your own Capstone project too. So those are some resources to help you start thinking about this process. And then these are some of the resources that I've already mentioned. We are updating a bunch of documents that you can use to help with your search over the summer, especially with the changes in the unit count. We're having to update those documents. GSPP jobs once we start receiving proposals, and then the directories of the Capstone projects from previous years, and of course the GSPP alumni network. This is a general timeline of the whole 9 months, starting from August, just to give you a sense of what those 9 months look like. Obviously, the fall is preparing and identifying and finalizing Capstone project, and the spring is actually carrying out the work with the idea that you would submit your final report by the first week of May. Well, that's it. We're happy to take questions if you have any more. We have plenty of time. I don't know.
I'll actually answer that question about the course really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So next year, we're really trying to align the Capstone course with the way Capstone is delivered for the MDP and MPA program as well. And so what that means is there will be 2 Capstone sections for the MDP students next year. So you'll be divided in half, most likely. So half of the cohort will have one instructor and half will have the other instructor. We don't know yet who will be teaching those 2 sections. We have a good idea about one, but not the other. But you will have 2 folks to choose from. And the nice thing about having a smaller section and your own faculty teaching that section is that then you've got a person who is reviewing your project scope with you early on, giving you ideas in the fall, and then in spring is the faculty advisor who meets every week with your the rest of your cohort that's in that section. That said, it doesn't keep you from, as the resource basement, going out and finding other faculty here at GSPP or across the university, help guide you, help you choose a good client, help you think through problems, because prior to this year, MDP students have been required to find their faculty advisor elsewhere on campus. And so there are a lot of faculty members who are used to advising on MDP projects and have formed relationships with MDP students. So there are other experts on the campus who would be more than happy to meet with you, talk through your projects with you. So don't feel like you can't still go out and have conversations with other faculty members, but the structure of the course itself will be here at the Golden School and faculty members.
Yes.
Is it like this advisor will be in addition to the faculty, so we'll be attending the sections with the faculty as well as with the other person, or it's like we only attached to the person whom we have selected?
Yes, so let me try it one more time and just make sure everyone's clear, because this is the part that's different from prior years. So this year, let's say Cecile and I are the 2 faculty members that are chosen to teach Capstone, but we aren't because we're not faculty members, but I'm just doing this as an example. So half of you will be assigned to the field section, half of you will be assigned to my section. We will be the faculty that meet with you every week in the spring semester. But in the fall semester, you'll come and say, hey, Emmy, I talked with the UN. I think we have a really good project idea. You take a look at this with me, look at the project scope, see what you think. I'll meet with you, I'll advise you, I'll say, that looks good, but let's try these 2 other places also, because I really like to see you push yourself and get 3 choices in the fall. So that's what we'll say in that meeting, and then you'll circle back to me later in the fall and say, oh, that was great. I met 2 other clients. Now I have these choices. What do you think? We'll chat about blah, blah, blah. And then by the end, by December,
you'll figure out what your project is, and then every week in the spring, you'll meet in my class, for Capstone. But in the meantime, while you were going out and finding your 3 choices, you could have talked to David Silverman, you could have talked to Paul Gertler, you could have talked to who knows what your topic is out there in UC, or you could have talked with Steve Raphael or Jen Bissell or Dorothy or Manisha here at GSPP to help you get your client, get your project. But those people are not necessarily going to continue with you every week in the spring. Like, let's say Manisha says, hey, I have a great idea for a client. I love your idea. I have a great idea for a client. Let me help you get connected to that person. And then maybe you talk with her one other time. Then maybe in the spring, you run into a hurdle with your project and you go and talk with Manisha about it because it's an area of expertise that she has. But you're still meeting with me in my class every week with the rest of half of your cohort. But then maybe Manisha, you're meeting with once every month or, once every 2 months, or maybe not at all, because she's not necessarily assigned to you or your project, but she's just someone who's mentoring and like is helpful and with somebody that kind of helps you get your client. Question? Yes. So what's different is in the past, you would say to your instructor, there was one instructor, which was the program director overseeing all of the Capstone section, and they would ask you to find a faculty advisor on your own. You would say, okay, I found Manisha. Manisha agreed to be my faculty advisor for the project. And the whole spring semester, you would be talking with Manisha as much as you could about that project, but you're still having the same one professor for the whole class. And your faculty advisor was not necessarily somebody who was signed up to really oversee your project. It's just that they agreed to work with you on that project. Does that make sense? Okay. Sorry to be overkill. I'm just trying to make sure, because it is a little bit different. It's different this year, so I just make sure I'm clear. Yeah.
So if we get any client or project or research project where we require to move another place, would it be like we were allowed to move or not? Like we have to stay in person here, like during whole spring semester. Like for example, if we get some assignment maybe in Africa or India, yeah, and that research or that project required us to work on ground, to be there.
I don't think we have approval to have remote students elsewhere, but if right? I don't think
There'll be all kinds of problems in doing that for the whole semester. But if you do need to go over spring break or something like that, I think that's something that students very commonly do.
Yeah.
And if you have to do a couple of days on the edge of spring break to make it work, just make
Right.
sure your instructors of your other classes are informed and are okay with your attendance policy, just like you would do now for a family emergency or anything else.
Right.
So, I know you said that we fill out a preferences for like the Capstone instructor.
Yeah.
Is it okay to change, like suppose I choose one, but then I have a clash with suppose DS acquisition or something like that? So what is the time frame that we are allowed to like change in that situation?
Yes. So we deal with this every year, and it usually works itself out. We often will say, if you need to switch, you need to find somebody from the other section to switch with you, because really what we're trying to do is keep those two sections equal, because you can't have 25 people in one and, the remainder of the cohort in the other. So that's the only thing. And it may be that it will be fine for you to switch, but we may also need you to find a fellow student to switch with you to keep it that, make it work case scenario.
I know we're taking Capstone for credit as well, so apart from the final presentation that I saw was due as part of the degree requirement and the report, are there other submissions per se that you need to do
Yes.
for the grade, and how does that work?
Yes. So there's a syllabus for Capstone, just like there's any other course, and there are things that you're turning in throughout the semester. So maybe the first one is your problem statement or something. I can't exactly remember, but there are things that you're turning in as homework for, for that, as products for that class throughout. And there's a syllabus for that, just like any other course.
I had a second question.
And basically those assignments are helping you get to your final paper. So they're really just trying to keep you on track to get that final paper done.
For the independent study bit, like I've come across professors who offer it as a 1 credit independent study with them, so I'm wondering if that counts, or does it have to maybe be,
Oh, well, we set up the 3 units, to give students that space in your, to give you that credit because that's what students wanted. If for some reason you didn't want 3 units, I'm sure we could work with you to give you what you need.
yeah, like, I'm just wondering because those 3 credits do count towards credit requirement. And let's say,
Yes.
I do need the time equivalent of the 3 credits.
Yes.
But that independent study with the professor is just 1 credit, but can I still count that as being?
Well, here's the thing, it's, this additional 3 units is not just any 3 units. It'll be 3 units specifically to be added on to the capstone.
Okay.
So when you look at, once it's created, when you look at the description of the independent study, it'll say something like independent studies for the MDP capstone. So that will be specific to adding the 3 units on. Now, if you're hoping to just have more room in your schedule so you can take other courses, then just do the 6 units and take another, you know, if you wanted to take another class, you're not required to do the additional 3 units. It was really, really just to give folks flexibility. Either A, you want to really dive in and spend most of your time on your capstone, or you want to have the freedom to be able to take other classes on campus. But the beauty of the 6 units is that it is very, very, very reflective of the amount of work and time you will be spending on the capstone project. Because it is meant to be a big chunk of your time during the
And if I was your faculty member for the capstone, the independent study shows up with me as your instructor for that independent study as well, if that makes sense. Yes, I think the independent study isn't with some other faculty member, if that's what you were thinking, if you were imagining some.
Yeah, because when you gave the Manisha example, I thought.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with any of that I was talking about. Yeah, the independent study is just making the capstone course larger. Yeah.
You don't have to go find a faculty member to do that
Yes.
for you. It's
Yes.
already created for you.
Yeah.
That makes it easier. Now, if you wanted to consult with someone who's not your capstone faculty advisor, like Manisha, you can. But at the end of the day, the person giving you the grade on your final project is the person who's a faculty member assigned to your capstone section. Yes.
I want to clarify how many self-directed study units can we take in a semester? Like the independent study.
So this is another way, the 3 additional units for independent studies specific to the capstone don't count towards the number of units that you can use for independent study for a grade.
Which I think is 4.
Yeah. So this is the 3, if you do the 3 units, it's not going to count against your 4 units for independent study. It's a completely separate independent study specifically only for the capstone.
I also have another question. I think it delves a bit into the financial details, but just as Krista mentioned, there may be international development institutions that have office in the United States. So if I work remotely for them in a project in Africa, they pay my salary from their US office using US dollar to my US bank account, does that necessitate me to apply for a CPT?
That's definitely a bio question.
I know.
And the answer is almost surely yes on that one. What's tricky is you don't always actually know where the office is registered, right? So many organizations have subsidiaries. So for example, take Plan International, the organization I used to work with, the whole Global Federation is headquartered in London, but that's through a subsidiary and their primary registration is in the US and they are a US-based organization. So it's why it's very, very tricky. And I would definitely make sure you're double checking with bio because that also has the additional value of if somehow something went wrong, there would be a record that you did check with bio and you tried to do the right thing, which would be very, very important for your US visa status. Yeah.
I love it. Sorry.
Can you say it again?
Check with bio, because there'll be a record that you checked. And you tried to do the right thing.
Thank you all. If you have to leave before we stop, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming today and encourage your fellow classmates to watch the recording if they missed it, because I think it's really valuable information. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Silent.